If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you my marriage was perfect. Not just good perfect. Ethan and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5, and we had that kind of connection people envied. The kind where friends joked about writing to relationship advice columns just to brag about us. I believed we had it all: trust, love, laughter, and that unspoken understanding that made us feel like we were on the same team no matter what. But looking back now, I can see that the cracks had already started forming long before I noticed them. I just didn't want to admit it. Or maybe I couldn't. It began subtly, almost invisibly, the way a quiet draft slips under a door. There were no fights, no screaming matches, no broken dishes, just little things. Ethan started coming home later than usual, brushing it off with a tired smile and some vague excuse about last-minute work meetings. His phone, once casually left on the coffee table, began to follow him everywhere: into the kitchen, the bathroom, even the shower. At first, I laughed about it. "Are you hiding state secrets or something?" I'd tease, and he'd chuckle, give me a quick kiss, and say something like, "If I told you, I'd have to kill you." It was playful, harmless, or so I convinced myself. Then came the absences, not just physically, but emotionally. He'd be sitting next to me on the couch, eyes fixed on his phone, nodding in all the right places while I told him about my day, but I could feel it. His attention was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. I tried to rationalize it. Work had been stressful for him. He'd just turned 35. Maybe he was going through some kind of phase. Everyone has rough patches, right? Besides, Ethan had always been loyal. He wasn't the type to lie, not about anything important. That's what I told myself every night when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt so alone in a marriage that used to feel like home. The turning point came on a Wednesday. I remember because it was pouring rain, the kind of relentless storm that makes the whole city feel heavy and gray. I'd gotten home early from work, a rare treat, and decided to surprise Ethan by making his favorite dinner, roast chicken with garlic mashed potatoes. I even opened a bottle of wine, thinking we could have one of those cozy nights in we hadn't had in months. He walked in an hour later than usual, dripping wet, looking startled to see me there. "You're home early," he said, his voice just a little too flat. I smiled anyway, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. "Yeah, I thought we could have dinner together." I gestured to the table, the candles I'd lit, the food still steaming. For a moment, his eyes softened, and I thought maybe this was at the moment we'd reconnect. But then his phone buzzed in his pocket, and everything changed. He glanced at the screen, his expression flickering with something I couldn't read. And then he said, "I'm sorry, I can't stay. I have to go back out." It was like the air was knocked out of me now. "But I made dinner." "I know," he said, his tone almost apologetic, but not quite. "It's important." I wanted to ask what could possibly be more important than us, than this moment, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched him grab his coat, watched the door close behind him, and listened to the rain swallow the sound of his footsteps. I stood there for a long time, staring at the 2 plates on the table, the wine glasses, the candles flickering in the draft. It was then I realized that whatever was pulling him away from me wasn't small. It wasn't a phase, and for the first time I felt afraid, not just of losing him, but of finding out the truth. The day after the meeting with Megan felt like waking up in a different life. Everything looked the same chipped coffee mug, same creaky floorboard near the kitchen sink, but it all felt loaded, like the air was heavier, the walls were listening, and even the light filtering through my blinds was sharper, almost judgmental. Megan had planted seeds in my head, and they were already sprouting into thorny vines. I couldn't stop replaying her words. "You need to know the truth about David." The way she'd said truth had been deliberate, slow, like she was unwrapping a dangerous secret. At first, I tried brushing it off. I busied myself with work emails, grocery lists, and reorganizing the kitchen pantry, anything to keep my brain from wandering back to that conversation. But humans are hopeless when it comes to avoiding curiosity. It's like telling someone not to push the red button. You just have to. By late afternoon, I was pacing my living room, phone in hand, debating whether I should text David or not. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, by the way, your ex says I should ask you about some truth. Care to elaborate?" No, that would make me look paranoid. And if there's one thing David hates, it's paranoia. Instead, I decided to do my own quiet digging. Not the kind where you stalk someone's social media like a lovesick teenager, but the kind where you keep your eyes open and ears sharper than a cat in a room full of mice. That night, David came over for dinner. I'd made because it's his favorite, partly because cooking always calms my nerves. He walked in like he always does, a confident stride, a warm kiss on my forehead, and that faint smell of cedarwood cologne. He seemed normal, too normal. We talked about his day, his co-workers, the traffic. But I was watching him more than listening, cataloging every facial twitch, every shift in his tone. There were no cracks. David was a fortress, until his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly flipped it over so the screen faced down on the table. My fork froze midair. "You're not going to check that?" I asked, aiming for casual, but my voice betrayed a note of curiosity. "It's nothing," he said, reaching for his water glass. But his jaw tightened. The rest of dinner felt like walking on a frozen lake, both of us pretending the ice wasn't groaning beneath our feet. When he left, I told him I was tired and needed an early night. The moment the door clicked shut, I sat in silence, listening to my own heartbeat. The next day, I found myself at Megan's cafe again. I told myself it was for the coffee, but who was I kidding? She spotted me instantly and smirked like she'd been expecting me. "So, did he tell you?" I shook my head. "No, he didn't tell me anything, but I noticed." I hesitated. "He's hiding something." Megan leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I know, and I can prove it." I kept telling myself I didn't need to know more, that I could just accept this version of events, sweep it into a dusty corner of my mind, and move forward. But the human brain doesn't work like that. Once a doubt takes root, it doesn't just sit there, it grows, winding its way through every memory, every conversation, twisting them into shapes that make you question everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, my husband breathing steadily beside me, and every sound in the house felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the old wooden frame under the mattress, the faint whir of the ceiling fan, each one seemed louder than usual, like the silence itself was taunting me. I kept replaying the scene in the cafe over and over. Her laughter, his smirk, the way their eyes had locked just a little too long. By 3 a.m., I gave up on sleeping. I padded downstairs, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the kitchen window staring out at the yard. The moonlight was bright enough to make the grass look silver. I thought about how we used to sit out there on summer nights, sipping cheap wine, talking about our dreams like they were inevitable. When had we stopped doing that? When had we stopped talking about anything real at all? The next morning, I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself not to let one tiny observation ruin the trust we'd built over 10 years. But then I noticed something else, something I couldn't just ignore: his phone. Normally, he left it charging on the counter when he got home. But lately, he'd started keeping it in his pocket, even in the bathroom, even while we ate dinner. "Works. Been crazy," he'd say when I asked why he was glued to it. And maybe that was true. But maybe at WASN, single quotes T-dot one evening, he left it on the couch when he went to grab a beer from the fridge. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid it would give me away. I picked it up, telling myself I was just going to check the time. But my thumb hovered over the screen, trembling, and that's when I saw a notification from someone named Lena. Just one word in the preview: soon. The air went cold around me. My grip tightened on the phone. But before I could open the message, he was back in the room. I put it down so fast I nearly dropped it, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing at me with just the slightest flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Yeah," I said, "everything's fine." But nothing was fine. From that moment on, I couldn't stop. Every little thing he did seemed suspicious. The way he lingered over texts, the way he laughed at something and quickly locked his phone, the way he'd leave the house saying he had errands but never quite explained what they were. The paranoia was exhausting, but so was pretending I didn't feel it. Finally, one Friday afternoon, I decided I needed answers, not guesses, not suspicions, real, undeniable truth. And that meant doing something I never thought I'd do: crossing a line. I waited until he left for work drinks and then went straight to his laptop. My hands shook as I powered it on, my reflection in the black screen looking like a stranger. I tried his usual password, it didn't work. I tried the one he'd been using for years, also nothing. He had changed it. That's when I realized if I wanted the